This is Join Us in France, episode 438. 438. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we talk about France. Everyday life in France, great places to visit in France, French culture, history, gastronomy, and news related to travel to France. Today, I bring you a trip report with Adrienne and Michelle, who visited France to learn more about Josephine Baker and the places connected to her life. They'll take us through their journey from Paris to the Dordogne and talk about the various locations they explored along the way. They'll also share insights into the history they uncovered and some very helpful travel advice for those interested in retracing Josephine Baker's footsteps. So let's dive in and find out more about this fascinating adventure. This podcast is supported by donors and listeners who buy my tours and services, including my itinerary consult service and my GPS self-guided tours of Paris on the Voice Map app. And you can browse all of that at my boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique. For the magazine part of the podcast, after the interview, I'll discuss 10 things you need to do when preparing a trip to France. Bonjour, Natalie and Adrienne, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie. Yeah, merci.
How nice to talk to you. We want to talk all about your recent trip to France on the footsteps of Josephine Baker. You also went to Paris. You had a wonderful time. So tell us when you went and why you decided to go together.
Okay, yeah. So we went in May. The purpose of the trip was to celebrate my 40th birthday. I had mentioned wanting to do something, and Natalie talked about going to France, which I had always wanted to do, but mostly just to learn about Josephine Baker. I had always admired Josephine Baker, so that was mostly the purpose of the trip. My 40th birthday, to travel together as friends for a fourth time and to learn about Josephine Baker.
Wonderful. You guys have traveled together before, yeah?
Yes.
And you don't kill each other?
No. We don't kill each other, but just like any relationship when you travel, you have your ups and your downs and you just manage through them. I think it's inevitable with a relationship. You can travel with your children, your loved one, your husband, your grandmother. It's just a normal relationship when you travel.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you particularly enjoyed, and perhaps you can start, Adrienne, and we'll get to you after that. Natalie.
Sure. So as I had mentioned, I always wanted to visit France, mostly because of Josephine Baker. But outside of that, I'm pretty ignorant to a lot of French history. I mean, I probably know the very popular things like the Mona Lisa, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, regionally, I didn't know very much. And I'd always heard things that culturally that kind of intimidated me about the language and the people. But overall, going into Paris and that Paris was loud and hurry up and get out of Paris and go somewhere else. But actually, that's where we started. And I actually really loved Paris a lot. I could see myself going back there again. There's a lot to do. I loved all the art. I loved just walking around the city and the architecture and the river. It's so pretty. And again, there was just so much that you could choose from. It was a little bit overwhelming. And I think we discussed some of that in our trip planning when you did our trip itinerary report. So Paris is just beautiful.
Yeah.
I could go back to the museum all day. I could spend all day in the museum.
What do you think, Natalie?
I agree with Adrienne. I think the time of year that we traveled was also a great time to see Paris. France is an easy country to travel. And coming off of the pandemic, we really wanted something that was easy, beautiful, and the landscape at that time in spring, just seeing all the flowers blossom next to the architecture. And for me, what's captivating about Paris is you have this old architecture with these modern staircases built in and modern pieces blended in. So it's just visually very pleasing. And the food is great. The museums are great. There's art, there's fashion. It's just a wonderful way to celebrate someone's birthday. So I really encouraged her, let's go to France.
That's wonderful. So did you do something special on your birthday, the evening of your birthday or the day of your birthday?
Yeah, we spent the first 3-4 days in Paris, and then we went into Dordogne, the south of France. And on my actual birthday, I did have the opportunity to visit the chateau of Josephine Baker, Chateau de Milande.
Yes.
And yes, I did that on my birthday, and I could not have asked for a better experience. It was just a dream come true. I cannot put it into words.
That's
really
great. That's great. So how did you make your way to the Dordogne from Paris? Did you take the train, Natalie?
Yes, we took the train. It was a relatively fast trip. It was a speed train. So it only took us 2 hours. And then we rented a car, an electric car, which you said was very brave of us.
Yeah.
Because I own an electric car here in the States, it is a slightly different than doing it in France. But we did navigate it. My only advice would be to make sure wherever you're staying has an electric charger, because we did find on our drive that some of the electric chargers weren't working properly.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice, is just to make sure whatever hotel you book or wherever you're staying, you have somewhere to plug in. Once we found that, everything was just easy.
What car rental company did you use?
Six.
We used to, yeah.
And they gave you what kind of electric car?
I think it was a Fiat. Was it a Fiat?
That was a Fiat.
Oh, it was the E500, the electric 500, the tiny thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, how cute. That's a cute little car. I love it. That's a cute little car. But that Fiat cannot go from Bordeaux all the way to the Dordogne without charging, right?
You're pushing it. You can. You can, but it's better just in case to charge it right in between, because we weren't comfortable doing it on the way there. So we tried to stop to charge. But on the way back, we went all the way, I believe. Is that correct, Adrienne?
That sounds right. I don't think we stopped to charge on our way back.
Oh, wow. Good little car. Good little car. People ask me when they're visiting if they should rent an electric car. And I always say kind of no, but I am all for electric cars. But so did they give you a charge card or something that you could use to initiate your charges?
I believe they did give us a card, but it didn't work. Correct, Natalie?
Yeah, it wasn't working. They didn't really have, I would say that's the part that fell through. It should have worked easy and smoothly, but it just, I think on the back end, they didn't have the system set up correctly.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, because I wonder, are they ready? I mean, it's already hard enough for people who buy an electric car to get all the types of, because in France, we have so many chargers that you're going to run into. And a lot of them require something completely different. You need an app or you need an RFID card. And usually there's a phone number you can call to initiate the charge, but they'll usually tell you, okay, you have to download this app and you have to set up your account and you have to put in your credit card and you have to get all this verification, blah, blah, blah. And then I can launch the charge. And I'm like, well, that's going to take like 15 minutes just before you even start charging. Yeah. Yeah. So overall, you were happy with your experience with the electric car so long as you have a place to charge at night.
Correct.
Yeah. And I did all the driving, which was fine. I had volunteered to do that because I prefer to drive long distance. It helps me kind of get familiar and stay awake, because Natalie will tell you I will fall asleep. I will fall asleep on any mode of transportation if I'm a passenger and I'm not driving. But the drive was really smooth. I did listen to the podcast episodes because I was apprehensive a little bit about the time and, understanding what all of them mean and speed limits and things like that. And I will say that the podcast that you had, I think there were 2 of them on driving in France that were really helpful for me. Yeah. And then I had never driven an electric car prior to coming on this trip. So that was an experience for me too. But I mean, you get the hang of it pretty fast. It was just, I think like the charging hiccups with the electric vehicle. And, obviously you kind of knew a little something more than we did, knowing the distance that we had to go and what the charging situations are like. Yeah. I think that would be the biggest recommendation, or just something we want people to be aware of, like they were wanting to do that. Yeah.
I mean, we have good infrastructure for electric car charging in France. I mean, I was just in Tennessee where it was, I don't know where anybody charges, honestly. I went looking for chargers and I opened my app, like I opened a Better Route Planner, and I was like, there's 2 chargers in Nashville? Are you kidding me? Like, there's 2 chargers in the village next to mine. It's a village.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But you still have to mess with, is it going to be a fast charge or is it going to be a slow kind of charge? But if you're staying overnight, it doesn't matter. Like your car is going to be sitting there all night. It'll charge.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. Okay. Enough about the electrical. But thank you for engaging me on that because I want to go back to the Dordogne with my electric car. And I'm like, where am I going to charge? Like, I can't.
Hotel Madeleine.
Hotel Madeleine. Aha. Aha.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm very glad to hear that. Okay. So how did you like the Château des Milandes, for example? I know it was your birthday, so probably hopefully you were in a good mood. Was it all you had hoped?
It really was. Just being on the property, which is very well taken care of on the exterior and interior. They don't let you take photos on the inside, but all of the rooms were just, I really felt like I could feel Josephine Baker, and her spirit there in France and how she felt about France and how people felt about her. And even the docent, right? They were amazing to talk to during our time there, and the added information that they gave us outside of the brochure. It was just everything. It was a really beautiful capsule and attraction to visit. Even if you don't know anything about Josephine Baker, I think anybody could appreciate it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Did you see the bird show?
No, I didn't. I think I saw them setting up for it, but I think they bypassed on the bird show.
Yeah. Very good. What else did you do in the Dordogne?
Well, let's see, Natalie. We went to a couple, I think kind of like really bypassed on one of the castles. And then there was another one, and the name escaped me, that we did go and visit very briefly. Do you recall the name of that one, Natalie?
No. Well, for me, the castles weren't as big. The big thing was definitely seeing Josephine Baker's. And just to add to that trip of when we went to the Milady's castle, I think one of the beautiful things that we saw is we forget that the people that are working there, the docents, are enthralled with Josephine. So when Adrienne started talking with one of them, I had mentioned that she did a full photo shoot as Josephine Baker. And just to see the docent's eyes light up when she saw it, she was taken away and she felt like she was actually speaking to Josephine. It was
wow.
a moment that was overwhelming and it was so beautiful. But for me, I think in that Dordogne area, the biggest things were the castle and personally was Gouffre de Padirac.
Le Gouffre de Padirac, yeah.
It's like traveling to another world. It's like, 170 million years ago it started when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth. And you go down into this giant hole in the earth and you feel like you're in the movie like Avatar or Lord of the Rings. And it's just breathtaking. And it's good for children and adults.
Yeah, so that one is not quite... I mean, that one is what I consider to be a different part of the Dordogne because it's a bit of a drive. It's like an hour and a half drive between Sarlat and Padirac, but it's totally worth it. I mean, it's such a beautiful place. And I've been going since I was a kid. So to me, it also brings memories of going with my parents when I was little and always being like, oh my God, what is this? It's fun. The boat ride is fun too, right? The little boat ride down there is excellent. That's great. That's great. One thing that's interesting, I see in your notes, Adrienne, that you liked the food at the chateau. So you got your lunch at the chateau. I saw it. I saw they were serving stuff, but I never tried it. You thought it was particularly good, huh? And by chateau, I mean the one, Les Milandes, the Josephine Baker chateau.
Correct. I know salad is probably not something that comes to mind as a phenomenal dish, but I mean, the salad had the duck breast and the goose Karen, is that how you call it? I mean, the pate, it was just so delicious.
It was her first time having it too, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
it was my first time having. Yeah. I mean, I'd say, like, what was it? It was duck breast, and the texture was kind of like a pork belly, I guess, a little bit. But it was it was just a phenomenal song. I mean, and while we were there, obviously this was our country. This is what this region was known for, the dusk and the walnuts and the strawberries, the salad hats alone. It had all of those things, but it was a standout for me because I did, on any normal circumstance here in the United States, I probably would not have had liver. I am not a fan of any type of liver whatsoever. But I told myself I was going to France. I'm going to try this, and, I heard all the talk about how rich it was and the foie gras, and we had that on maybe 2 occasions at 2 different restaurants. And I can't say that I was blown away. It wasn't scary anymore. I went back to France and someone offered it and was like, oh, you have to try this. So, it's the best of the best. I would try it again, but I wouldn't say I was blown away by the taste of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not my typical, I like spicy food, for example, so
yeah,
not my typical thing, but it wasn't terrible.
My husband loves foie gras. And I was raised on it, and yet I'm like, I can take it or leave it. Like, it's fine. So I'll have some, like at Christmas time or whatever. It's a special occasion, but he ordered it. If it's on the menu, you can be pretty sure he's going to have it. But not me, no. I usually just don't do that. But some people love the stuff, and yeah, we don't all have to enjoy, it's good for the ducks that some of us don't love it as much.
Right. I was going to say there was another dish and it was the night we said Natalie won the dish for the night, but we were trying to actually get away just for a second from French food. And then we went to this, was it at a seafood Italian restaurant or something on the plaza in Sargent? And you ended up muting this. The waiter said you recommended this one dish, but he said he was very French and that the dish was, the part of the animal from the throat, and he acted like, I don't know if you'll like it, but you ended up ordering it and it was delicious too. That was a very delicious dish. Wow, I cannot remember.
The stuffed coup de canard, the duck neck, but it's stuffed.
Oh no, I believe it was cow.
Huh.
Because it was at the Italian restaurant. It was like the cheek and neck of the cow. So, but I'm partially Spanish, so we eat everything.
Right.
It was like, hand it over. Let's try it. And it was divine.
Yeah, it was good.
Fantastic.
That was really good.
Fantastic. Yeah. So how did you like Sarlat, Natalie? Was it as good as you had hope?
I didn't have as much expectations. I know Adrienne did a lot of research, so I kind of went into it open. And it's beautiful to walk around that little city center. The moment we arrived in the morning, it was rains and there was double rainbows and it was lush. And then you have the old, pebble or the roads that are the old rocks through it. So it was very, very beautiful. But I think my favorite time was driving through just around that city area with the landscape. And we drove through a field of like poppies that were blooming and just the foliage was everywhere. And then watching all these, I didn't know it was such a big bicyclist country where people just go on bicycle tours.
Yeah.
And so you get to see them go through the valleys. And so that was just pretty to watch. And a good idea of maybe later.
You can totally do, you can rent a bike. You set yourself up in Sarlat, you rent a bike, and then you do day excursions around the area and just come back and loop around and come back for the night. And then on a different night, you go on a different loop. It's really very doable and very fun. If you enjoy biking, it's really good. It looks like you had a kind of a bit of a snag with your accommodations in Sarlat. Do you want to tell us about that?
I think for our accommodations in Sarlat, we kind of ventured out and we were looking at different sites that looked good to stay. And Adrienne set everything up and it should have ran without a hitch. But unfortunately, when we arrived, we started getting text messages with the wrong address, which should have been the first warning sign. And a very American phrase is, it was very shady. So we kind of took this in your stomach when you have that feeling like, something's wrong here. And when we showed up, Adrienne had everything printed, ready to go to verify that we were at the wrong address. And even though we used Google Translate and we were communicating back and forth, it still wasn't going well. So they acted like they put us at the wrong property. The house that they converted to an Airbnb, it didn't have any locks on our doors. And that's a big warning sign for me.
Yes.
And we had no air conditioning. So I was like, Adrienne, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So is this?
Property owners own multiple properties in the area, and we want it to be in the city center, and they confirmed that. But then when we arrived, or like on that day as we were heading there, and they're confirming, and hey, we're excited to welcome you, but it was the property address outside of the city center. So, and having driven and, played around with the electric cars for a while. Once we got there, our car, at that point, our car did need a serious charge, and we had this language barrier, and they're, trying to get us settled in at this property. We're tired, and I would have probably laid my hat down and been like, okay, I'm just too tired. I'll deal with this the next day. But Natalie is like, no, we can find. And it worked out. And it turned out to be a much better decision. That was the night before my birthday. But then once we got into the new hotel, the Madeline, we were much better off. Like, it was a much better decision.
Yeah. So what was the name of the bad hotel?
Oh, I don't want to say. I think, so many people are getting into the Airbnb business, and not everybody understands how hospitality runs. And so I think, they're really, I think even though they own multiple businesses, I think they're really still learning that.
Yeah, but you got to tell us because we don't want to go there, right?
I might not say it right, but and I found them through a recommendation of another travel podcast or bloggers, I guess that's what they call them, their site. And so, I thought, oh, okay, this looks great. But it was Bories, Bories, Les Bories in the city.
Yeah, okay.
So
this is not something I had recommended, right?
No.
Okay.
I think it was mostly disappointed and just even after, when we left in the middle of the night, like almost 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And we're like, we're out of here. We're going to go check out. I sent a text letting them know, hey, this wasn't a good fit for us. And they just never wrote back. The communication was
wow.
Like even, it was very bad. And okay, they own a shop
in the downtown area.
Yeah, they own a shop in the city center. And I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm African American, and there's just not a lot of there weren't a lot of African American tourists there, or tourists that look like myself. So we walked by them, and I knew, I could see their face, and they just didn't acknowledge or say, "Hey, sorry, that didn't work out." It was really weird.
Yeah.
Glad we found something better.
So then you went to the Hotel Plaza Madeleine in Sarlat, where I have stayed, but I didn't know they had an electric charger. But it was years ago, so maybe they didn't.
They have a little garage.
Sure, how
nice.
They
have a garage you can park and a charger. I think 2 chargers there.
Yeah,
so they're so easy.
Excellent. Well, that's where I'm going then. Fantastic. But I've stayed there before and it was good. It's a good place. I'm glad it worked out. All right. Yeah. Well, okay. So do we have more to say about the Dordogne, or shall we move on to Paris?
Well, I will say, in addition to Josephine Baker Festival, I really loved the garden. What was the mayor?
Marquessac.
Yes.
The suspended garden.
Yes. We loved the gardens. And then there was also the water garden, the Jardin Léo.
Oh, don't know that one.
That was a standout to me. It had a lot of lilies and just different plants that I'm sure they're not native to the area, but the landscaping of that with the bridge and then the boardwalk over the water with the lily pads and all the frogs and fountains. It was really beautiful.
Can you tell why Josephine Baker liked this place so much?
Yeah, it's beautiful. The country is a beautiful escape from the city. The hills, just lush, the green areas. I think she liked that to get outside of Paris.
Mm-hmm. I think she also loved growing. She had such a beautiful landscape that she grew things. She really put on her boots and her gardening gear and went out and did gardening, and then used that for the parties she would throw and invite people in the city in. So the community is very different there too, opposed to Paris.
It's a great place to raise kids, and she had a lot of kids to raise. So
yes, she did.
So,
one of the things we learned from the docents was that she would host these amusement park style parties on her property, and rich or poor or low income, that anybody could come. She wanted just to be welcoming for anybody. And the docent said this was she was one of the first people to do something like this, not just in the region, but I think she said in all of France, these large carnival kind of style parties and amusement things. So, and her heart was so big, with the children and everything. We all know her story. She ended, not as wealthy as she had been, but without a doubt, she was just an amazing person, through and through.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's fantastic to see the place, and you see all her family photos inside of her chateau,
Yeah.
and you see the kids,
Yeah.
and you see the different husbands that she had, and and the costumes that she wore, and it's just a fun place to visit. I really can't recommend it high enough, and I think you really understand well. Well, for me, I could tell right away why you would want this, because if you were a wealthy entertainer and you wanted to have a lot of kids and take care of them and have a good place for them to grow up in, well, this chateau was that was good. If you can afford it, it's fantastic. Yeah. All right. Let's spend a few minutes talking about Paris and what particularly stands out to you both about Paris.
You want to go first, Natalie?
Well, one of my must lists, because I've been to Paris before, was with Adrienne, was I said I can go anywhere because it's your first visit to Paris, but the Museum d'Orsay is one of my favorite, because there's something about visiting a museum in an old train station, what that looks like, and having to see the Art Nouveau is one of my favorites. So that's my favorite museum in the city, I think. Even opposed to the Louvre, which I know that's a big one for people to see, but it's charming in its own way.
Yeah. Yeah. And now when you say Art Nouveau, you mean museum itself, the building has lots of...
No, they have a section of furniture.
Oh, that they do. That's true. That's true. I forgot about that. Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They have the beautiful Art Nouveau furniture. That's right. Forgot.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very nice. So it was your first time in the Orsay. Adrienne, what did you think?
Unfortunately, I loved the artwork inside of it. I loved that it's the train station and everything, but it was just that main thoroughfare. Like when you go through and enter, and then there's all the sculptures like there. And it wasn't very busy, or as busy, I guess, as it could have been in a normal non-pandemic time. So I'm sure there weren't as many people that could have been there, but that part was a little underwhelming to me. Like when you go in, it just felt cluttered and just really weird. I don't know how to just put it into words, but the galleries outside, on the sides of each of that, and then upstairs, I loved all that. I loved all the artwork.
Yeah.
It was just that main
just that part you didn't
entrance.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. I mean, otherwise it was lovely to talk, and that's wonderful.
So what was your favorite thing in Paris? Because it was your first time. So did you have a favorite?
Oh my gosh. I really, I don't know, just being in the city. I don't live in a major city here in the U.S., but just being in a city, walking around, seeing that architecture, visiting the museums. I love the Marianne Ibrahim Gallery. We popped in there and saw some of the artwork on display there.
Tell us more. I don't know about this. I don't know anything about Marianne Ibrahim.
I believe she has galleries in Chicago and in Paris. I'm not sure if she has them anywhere else, but she spotlights mostly artists of color, African-American. I could be wrong if there may be others, but it's a really small gallery. It's nothing really huge, but it was recommended by a friend that we pop in there, and we just asked. So it wasn't a huge part of our trip, but the artwork there, that stood out. And it's a beautiful building. The little landmark where Josephine Baker performed, we, passed through her old neighborhood, which was really a cute neighborhood, like in the Montparnasse.
Yeah, Montparnasse. Yes.
Yes. That area, dining at the La Coupole.
La Coupole. Oh, yeah, that's good, right?
La Coupole. Thank you. And then also the marker, just walking and all of those little parts and seeing the theaters where they performed. I really loved it. I like the garden outside of I think it's outside of the Louvre that we sat in, and we had the macarons. That one was really pretty.
Well, our tour that we did, that was phenomenal in
the Little Africa of Paris, their tour, it was the fashion tour. So they gave us the tour of the communities that are where a lot of, I guess, African immigrants into Paris have made their home. And we learned about the different fabrics that you could find at the different markets, and how they fashion them and where they come from. Like, is it from Cameroon or Benin or Togo? Well, different parts of West Africa, but particularly West African countries from West Africa with French connection. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun. We did a little shopping there.
So this was an organized tour that you took?
Yes.
And so the name of the tour company. Is it Little Africa Village is the name of the company?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
very good. I hadn't heard of them. That's great. And they give you a tour of a whole neighborhood or something?
So she went over the fashion. She basically went over the different cloths. And as you're touring the different vendors that sell these cloths and the different types, she could give you a little history about the buildings as well.
Oh.
And what it was like to grow up in that time and what they were facing. And from a fashion perspective, it was nice to see that they are taking all these, forgive me if I say this incorrectly, because this was all new for me. They take these older fabrics and they are modernizing them into modern wear, which is to see that blend was really beautiful.
Fun.
Right. Or I guess if we could make them a traditional fabric, but make it more contemporary. Yeah.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. So do you remember the part of Paris that you were touring with this person? Was this a French person or an American person? The tour guide.
Like a worldly person. I know she's lived so many places, but I don't know what she considers herself, if she's French or American.
And so what neighborhood did you meet in?
Oh, I cannot remember the district.
But it was a distance from the city center, right? It was not city center of Paris.
No.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Oh, I'll look it up. If I can find it, I'll put it on the website because I'll probably put a link to her services since you enjoyed it. That's great.
I think it's the sixth
definitely.
through.
Okay.
Might be the sixth through. The first.
So that's the Latin Quarter.
No. It wasn't Latin Quarter then.
Okay.
I don't think it was a Latin Quarter. I have to look it up myself again. It escapes me right now. But I do recommend if you're interested, the tours. They have the fashion one and they also have the food tour, which we did not do. So, and then that one, you go to a restaurant and you visit the different market stalls where they're selling fruits and vegetables. I think anything you would find there, but then also I think that they probably import that are typical to what they normally eat in West Africa.
So Natalie, it sounds like you enjoyed having the breakfast at the Four Seasons. I want to hear about that.
Well, Four Seasons in Paris is like that typical movie scene. You walk into it and it's breathtaking. It's got all the flower arrangement. Everybody's dressed up to perfection. I mean, I even had to look at my shirt. I was like, is this a shirt that one of my kids has stained? I mean, when you walk in, everybody's so nice. It smells great. And we're rushed into the breakfast room and it was vaulted ceilings, manicured gardens, and ordered a lovely breakfast. And the best was Adrienne. She won the dish award for that breakfast. It was this avocado toast that looked like a beautiful caterpillar on top of this bread.
Ooh.
It was delicious.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they serve that for breakfast?
Yes. It really was delicious and it was beautiful. And again, I wasn't really thinking I'd come to France and have avocado or avocados.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'll take it, So it was delicious. And yeah, the Four Seasons was wonderful.
Huh. So, but you weren't staying at the Four Seasons, were you?
Nope, just went for breakfast.
So did you reserve that in advance or you just showed up?
I think we just showed up.
Yeah, for breakfast, we just showed up.
This is a really good thing to know about. I mean, most of these beautiful hotels, like, the super expensive hotels, you can usually have breakfast there if you want to see them, go for breakfast. And it might cost you what? $35 to $50? But you'll have a lovely time.
Yeah, it's nice to have like a good chat there. And when you want to just take a moment to enjoy company in a beautiful environment, I think it's well worth the break on your feet while you're traveling.
Yes. And it's also very typical for French companies that want to wine and dine someone to have a breakfast meeting at one of these fancy hotels because they know it's fairly quiet and you can just have a leisurely breakfast. And, nobody's drinking, so that's good. I mean, for a business meeting, it's best. And so, yeah, I've seen lots of companies do that, just invite people to join them at a fancy hotel for breakfast. So, yeah, fantastic.
And I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about it, but I mean, we stayed at a pretty lovely hotel in Paris. There were moments where I think it was a little underwhelming. For the most part, it was a nice hotel. I love the view from the balcony of the Eiffel Tower, the view around the city and the street, and it was quiet, but it was really close to the Champs-Élysées. and the theater where Josephine Baker was. So we visited a very nice, quaint, family-owned mansion, right? Not a little family-owned mansion or something.
Family-owned. Yeah, it was like an old townhouse that they converted, or I guess they would consider it a townhouse back then. It's several floors, so a little mansion that they converted into a hotel, and it's been in the family for generations. And it was lovely, but it did have those little staircases and tiny elevators, but that's to be expected with the old world. We could see the Eiffel Tower straight off the balcony, and so it was nice to watch it at night with all the glittering and different light shows that it does.
Interesting. And what was the name of that hotel in Paris?
Hotel Saint Regis.
Oh, Saint Regis. That was the Hotel Saint Regis. Because I always recommend the restaurant Le Saint Regis, but this was a hotel. Nice.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, well, we have to wrap it up, but there are a couple of things that you noted, Natalie, that things you would do differently. Do you want to tell us about that a little bit?
I would plan, since I'm a foodie and Adrienne's not as much of a foodie, I would have planned the meals a little bit more just to lead to different experiences while we're there. So I probably would have done that. And maybe because we had extra time, booked a little culinary course in Sarlat.
Oh, I don't know if those are readily available in Sarlat. Probably there's got to be something, especially in high season, because May is high season for Sarlat. So probably they would have something. Oh, that's a good idea. It's a very good idea. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So are you two planning more adventures, or are you done traveling for now?
For now, little adventures, but I think Adrienne already asked me, like, okay, well, what do you want to do for your birthday? So I said 2024, probably either doing New Zealand or Iceland.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, Natalie and Adrienne, thank you so much for talking to me about your wonderful trip and the electric car and the good hotels and the bad hotels and the whole of it. It was fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. Merci.
Au revoir.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. That's Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you all for supporting the show. Some of you have been doing it for many years. You are wonderful. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Susan Luscombe, Teresa Perdue, Wes Kreitz, Heather Lutweiler, Jeremy Baird, and Maria Trenzado. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. And new patrons, I thank you for hearing me out last week. Yes, I would like a raise. And also, I want to thank Stephen Struck for increasing his pledge. Thank you so much. Patrons, I would like to encourage you to install the Patreon app on your phone. It'll help you enjoy your rewards while on the go, including video and audio rewards. My thanks also to Greg Witten for sending in a one-time donation using the green button on any page on Join Us in France that says, Tip your guide. If you are preparing a trip to France and listening to as many episodes as you can to get ready, keep listening to the podcast because that's a great way to do it. Search the website as well. There's lots of information there. You can also hire me to be your itinerary consultant. Here's how it works. You purchase the service on joinusinfrance.com/boutique. Then you fill out a document to tell me what you have in mind. We make a phone appointment and chat for about an hour. And then I send you a usually very long document with the plan we discussed. Now, remember that my time is always booked up several weeks in advance, and I'm going to take some time off this summer as well. So you can see the date for my next availability on the only page where you can buy the service at the Join Us in France boutique. And I want to play a short review of this itinerary service from Richard Miller, who is coming to France soon.
Bonjour, Annie. This is Richard, Kathy, and Pocket. Thanks so much for the itinerary review phone call. Even with all the other planning we did, we found the phone call to be extremely informative and helpful, and we were blown away with the 157-page summary that we received based on our phone call. I also downloaded your audio tours. I'll send you a trip report when we get back. Salut.
He mentions his wife and Pocket. Who is Pocket? Well, it's a little dog. When I saw that they wanted my help bringing a dog to France, I got ready to argue with them that this was a terrible idea. And I had lots of things, listed. But then I realized quickly that there's a good reason for that. They do not know when they'll go back to the US. They have an open ticket situation. Being retired, they can do this. Also, Pocket is small enough to fly in the cabin and has lots of experience flying in the cabin with his mom and dad. So those are good reasons, I think, and Pocket is going to be fine. Thank you, Richard, for sharing your experience. And if we've done an itinerary call together, you and me, and you found it helpful, please record a voice memo and send it to me, Annie@joinusinfrance.com. I will play it on the podcast. But of course, if you can't talk to me because I'm booked up, you can still take me in your pocket by getting my GPS self-guided tours on the Voice Map app. I have 7 tours of Paris. They are designed to show you around all these different iconic neighborhoods of Paris. Eiffel Tower, which you can get in French or English, the Ile de la Cité, Le Marais, Montmartre, Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and the Latin Quarter. And if all you do is walk one of my tours in the morning when you're in Paris, and then go into some of the places that I take you to on the tour, you will have a fantastic time in Paris. I can guarantee it. You can get my tours either directly from the Voice Map app, where it's immediate, or you can buy tour codes on joinusinfrance.com/boutique, where you get a listener discount. All right, let's talk about the 10 things that you need to do when you're preparing a trip to France. Number 1, set a budget. Determine how much money you can allocate for your trip, taking into account expenses such as flights, accommodations, food, transportation, and activities. And I have to say that hotel costs have gone up a lot recently. There are hotels that I could count on getting for, 180, 200, 220 euros per night. Well, there's 350 and up now. The same hotels. It hasn't changed. It's just gone up a lot. And lots of people are telling me, wow, I can't believe how expensive Paris has gotten. And that's because we're coming up on the travel season, which is number 2 in my list. Choose your travel period. Consider the time of year you want to visit France. Take into account factors such as weather, tourism season, and local events or festivals. This summer is going to be extremely busy in Paris. April is already very, very busy in Paris. That's why hotel prices are going up. And I think a lot of these hotels are making up for the fact that they were shut down and on minimal help from the government during the pandemic. And so it feels like a breath of fresh air that the hotels are full and they can charge more. But I think some of them are, perhaps overdoing a little bit. And of course, it always helps if you know you're going to be in a specific area to Google and see what's happening in that area at that time of year that you're coming, because a lot of festivals and activities repeat year after year. And I know I had talked about doing a web portal to do all of that. You know what? It's too complicated. There are too many factors. I give up. I can't do it. But all of these tourist offices in all of these towns and villages, they have a list and they keep it up to date. The thing is, they don't announce things more than a couple of months early. So just keep an eye on things and decide. For instance, on the podcast, we talked about some festivals, Avignon, for instance. Well, that's in July, right? So if you want to see it, come in July. Number 3 is research destinations. Familiarize yourself with various regions, cities, and attractions in France to decide which place you want to visit and prioritize during your trip. And obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you know all about this because you listen to different people do trip reports and you're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. This is not the tourism bureau feeding you whatever they want to feed you. This is people who've done it and come talk about it. And so it's great that you're listening. Keep listening. Take notes on the places that sound really appealing to you. Number 4 is check visa requirements. To come to France, typically most of you will not need a visa, but a few people will. And so make sure of that. And you need to learn about the new ETIAS requirement to enter the EU. That's ETIAS. It's a new requirement to enter Europe. It has come to play in January 2022. I'm not hearing very much about it, so I don't know if they're really enforcing it, but learn about it because you might need to fill out a piece of paper. It's nothing much. It's probably a matter of filling a form, paying a small fee, and there you go. You're good to go for most people. Number 5, plan your itinerary. Outline a rough plan for your trip, including the destinations you want to visit, the duration of your stay in each location, and the order in which you want to visit them. The order is really, really important. Now, what most people do when they plan an itinerary is that they start reading a lot of blog posts. Maybe they read travel magazines, maybe books. They listen to podcasts, obviously, and they put a lot of stuff on their list. Unfortunately, that list is all over the place. And seeing that I do itinerary services with people, I can see that there is a great tendency to be all over the place. And that is the worst thing you can do, because all of these people who tell me they want to have a list that's never ending of things they want to see also usually tell me that they want to take it easy and be a flaneur. Well, you can't have it both ways. If you want to be a flaneur, you need to know exactly where you're going. You need to be with a tour, perhaps, or you need to use my voice map tours, or it doesn't have to be my voice map tours, other people's voice map tours as well, because those keep you gathered in an area where you see all the best of that area, and it saves you so much time rather than just trying to organize this stuff it's really complicated for people to understand. And I do it to the point where, depending on where you're staying in Paris, I will also say, look, from this place, the best way to get to wherever you're going today is going to be take bus number 53 or whatever. And because I know this stuff, it doesn't take me long to tell you, but it can take you a while to figure it out. So plan as much as you can and get some help if you need to. And the less time you have, the more help you need planning, really. Number 6 is book your flights. Flights are complicated because you need to book them quite a bit in advance. But, how do you figure out what the right price is? And I'm not sure I'm very good at guessing that. I just know that flights have gotten very expensive, a lot more expensive, obviously, since the end of the pandemic. Right after the pandemic, it was easy to find great deals. I'm not seeing so many of them anymore. So book your flights in advance. And that's probably the first thing you need to do is your flights. Because once you have your dates, everything else can fall into place. Number 7 is secure accommodations. Research and reserve accommodations in the cities that you plan to visit, considering factors such as location, budget, and amenities. More and more people are reporting problems with Airbnb in Paris. I'm not a great fan of Airbnb, especially in a city like Paris that has so many tourists that these apartments could be full between April and October. And the problem is people who live locally can't afford to compete with visitors who are only staying for, say, a week. So if the owner of the Airbnb gets it into their mind that they can rent this place for $350 a night, well, they don't really want to rent it to somebody for $1,000 a month during the off time. And so the city is putting in rules so that locals also have a chance at renting these places. But it's really difficult. So I'm hearing people report that their Airbnb was canceled at the last minute. And this is especially true in Paris. So have a plan B as well, okay? Because you need to be cautious. It's hard to find a place at the last minute in Paris unless you're willing to pay top dollar. Obviously, if you're willing to pay top dollar, this is not a problem. You'll find something. Number 8 is familiarize yourself with local transportation. Research the transportation options within France. You have trains. We've done whole episodes about trains. The buses, we've done that. 2 episodes about buses. Car rentals, we've done episodes about driving in France. And determine the best way to get around during your trip. Be realistic. There are places in France that you cannot visit without a car. Now, I'm not saying that there's absolutely zero public transportation going to that place, but there is so little public transportation that it's going to take you 10 days to do something that you wanted to do in 2 days. Okay, so just be realistic. If it's a tiny place, obviously there isn't a train going to it. I mean, that just makes sense, doesn't it? Think it through before you decide how you're going to make your way around the country. Number 9, learn basic French phrases. Equip yourself with a few essential French phrases to help you navigate and communicate more easily with locals during your trip. Now, this is vital if you are going to very small villages in France, places that do not get a ton of tourists all the time. But if you're going to Paris or other major cities that have, world-class museums and lots of visitors from all over the world, obviously these places hire people who can speak English. But if you are going to somebody's private museum that they set up because they have a passion for whatever it happens to be, then don't expect that person to speak fluent English. It's pretty obvious. Now, you don't need a lot of French, really. In France, you can get away with merci, obviously for thank you. But the most important word in the French language is, can you say it before I say it? Do you know what I'm going to say? It's bonjour. Bonjour. You don't have to say it that. You can say it very shyly. Bonjour. You can say, you can say it any way you want, but you have to say it. And you have to say that first. Before you say, excuse me, I need help. No. First, you say bonjour. It's amazing how French people are just convinced. That's a sign of whether you are a good human being or not. If you do not start with bonjour, you're good for nothing. So just learn to say bonjour. And then when you're done, merci. And I see people, arguing whether, what time you start saying bonsoir. It doesn't matter. It really does not matter at all. What matters is that you say bonjour. And if you feel like saying bonsoir after a certain time in the day, why not? Have at it. It doesn't matter. But do say bonjour at least. Number 10 is purchase travel insurance. This is getting more and more important for a lot of people. Now, there are lots of them. I have a list somewhere. I can't remember. I think Allied Insurance was the one that most people recommended. This is not an affiliate recommendation. I've just asked people which one they use, and that's the one that seems to be, la plus plébiscitée. Oh my goodness. I cannot speak English anymore. Things pop into my head in French so easily, and in English I have to slow down and think. It's time for me to go back to the US or I'm going to lose my English. It's terrible. Don't feel so bad if it's happening to your French. If you don't speak it every day, it's hard. I would love for you to help your friends plan their visits to France. Send them the trailer of the podcast. It's joinusinfrance.com/trailer. It's short, it's sweet, and they need to hear it and decide if this is something that will help them, and I think it will. And a big thank you to podcast editor Christy Kotovan, who produces the transcript so you can see in which episode we talked about that one place that you're interested in. The search works quite well on the site, and it will really save you a lot of time. Next week on the podcast, Elise Riven and I unravel the enigmatic story of Olympe de Gouges, a trailblazer in the fight for women's rights in the 18th century France. We uncover the secrets behind her groundbreaking work and the events that led to her ultimate terrible fate. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2023 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.